Hi. Up till now, I really hope I has built some trust with you. I tried my best to honestly speak about any kind of pawn structure and simply, well, to tell exactly what I think about it. But for the next couple of minutes, I will actually tell you a fairy tale. Well, um, this chapter is about the Benko structure, and I think from Black's perspective, it looks so deceptively beautiful. I mean, well, look at the pawn structure here. We basically have a perfect pawn structure, meaning that we only have one pawn island in terms of all our pawns are connected, while if we look at the whites, they are sort of separated into two blocks, and especially the pawns on b2 and a2 is quite vulnerable. If we sort of imagine where are the black pieces going, well, the bishop would always go to g7, where he would attack the weak pawn on b2, and after castling, we would put our rooks on a8 and b8, again pounding on these weaknesses of the white pawns. It sounds excellent, and black has a very easy play generally. I mean, you will castle, you have this strong bishop and rooks, as I said. The knights will find natural squares on f6 and d7, even regrouping via e8, perhaps to c7, and the queen is going to go to a5 or b6 to sort of make room for doubling the rooks. This Benko structure, I mean, I can understand that it was attracting so many people because it looks good. It sounds good. It was a very popular choice, I would say, in sort of by grandmasters who had to try and beat weaker players in opens, because when things goes well, they can go really well. And I think also it was popular among a lot of amateur players because it's so easy to explain the sort of attraction from the black perspective. So, I mean, well, what's the problem? Well, let's try and look at it from the white perspective. I think the main problem is a numeric one. Well, we have to do the count, and white do actually have 7 pawns, while black has only 6. So it is a gambit in the absolute sense, in terms of white has an extra pawn. When Magnus Carlsen was younger, he was playing in a tournament in Amsterdam, where it was sort of youth players against sort of more veteran players. I mean, the veteran players was not necessarily that old. I played myself at the age of 40, so it was a bit interesting to be a veteran at that time. But that was basically the concept. And a very young Magnus Carlsen was playing against Lubojevic. The concept in this Amsterdam tournament, sponsored by the now deceased chess mecene Van Ostrom, was that the young players all got to bring a coach. And I was so lucky that Magnus chose to bring me. And after the game he told me, Peter, a very important point in our chess sort of relationship with you being my coach is whenever I want to play the Benko gambit, you have to tell me it's a bad opening that loses a pawn. And well, that is the current status right now, actually, that the Benko gambit in its pure form, it doesn't really work. And that, I mean, well, white has an extra pawn, and somehow he is capable of, I mean, solidifying the structure on the queen side. I mean, in a modern way, they will play a4, they will try and secure the b5 square, and if black managed to neutralize that, then they will have the c4 square instead. So that, well, it turns out that it is a fairy tale, that it looks so nice for black, but unfortunately, well, in the very direct sense, it doesn't really work. The next game I will show works beautifully for black, but we are also going to discuss sort of the white side of it. But I think I will basically repeat the warning that Magnus told me to say that, well, the Benko gambit, I'm sorry, but it is a bad opening that loses a pawn. Hi, this is a game between Ortiz Suarez and Leon Hoyos. And, well, as announced in the introduction, it's a game that goes incredible well from Black's perspective, and really want to sort of play this Volga or Benko structures. Well, let's have a look at it. This the starting position here is the typical one in the Benko gambit, and in this game, White plays the move g3. I think around 25 years ago, this was really considered the clever way of countering the Benko. You go g3, and like after this, well, you just develop naturally. But at some point, Black started to figure out how to refine things, and the next move was one of them. It's well, I would really hope it looks early to you. Why should we play knight b6 that quickly? But it is kind of clever in terms of the knights now put pressure on the pawn on d5, which means White cannot develop fully naturally. I mean, he would probably like to play queen c2, but then something is going to hang on d5, and he's not in time to play rook d1. So he's kind of has to play some kind of artificial move now. And in the game, well, he chooses knight h4, which definitely is artificial, right? I mean, what is the particular argument of having the knight on h4? Why should it be very well placed there? If anything, I would argue it's far away from the queen side, where the likely action is going to happen. So he chooses to castles, rook b1, and the knight jump to c4. I think also a very nice move. I mean, of course, generally, it's very rare that you get to have a knight sort of outpost in your opponent's position. But I think it's not because it's generally bad, it's just because it's very generally hard to achieve. Even here, perhaps also, it looks a little bit sort of early, because why can't White just play the move b3? But after b3, there is the move queen to a5, and, well, you start attacking the knight on c3. Should he take on c4? We just take on c3 and collect c4 afterwards, and we are basically structurally winning. So queen c2 would be the logical follow-up, defending the knight. But then very typically happens knight a3, takes. And a position like this, I mean, it's just good for Black. I mean, Black has the pair of bishops. Rook is going to come to b8. Knight is going to go to d7. And even at times, you know, we can take on c3 and on a2 next. Basically, White cannot defend his structure on the king's side. And, well, something is going to drop there. I mean, a typical scenario would be that well, maybe the c pawn is going to be exchanged for the a and b pawn, but that will lead to a huge advantage for Black. Actually, we're going to see an example of that just in a short while. So White choose to play queen c2, you know, preparing b3, but of course Black play queen a5, ready for this jump after b3. So White does this very logical move of a4 in this position. This sort of starts to threaten b3, expelling the knight on c4. And, well, with the a3 square not being available. But knight d7 is a very nice retort, right? It renews the threat against c3, so you can't play b3. White keeps very logically sort of trying to, well, expel the pieces, right? Knight to a2, it seems to have the threat of b3 next, and the knight has to go back, and we can start harassing or even trapping the Black queen. So, at sight, maybe it looks like a very typical Benko, but this is a very good version for Black. But I think the reason the author chooses this game is that this is somehow, you can argue, it's an average Benko, where both players playing reasonable moves with reasonable plans, and that somehow very often turns out nicely for Black. For White to, you know, kind of refute this pawn sacrifice, much more precision is required. And here, a very strong move. Knight back to b6. I mean, maybe it looks like going back and forth, but well, we should remember the knight has also gone there and misplaced itself, and the key point is that we are attacking this pawn on a4. The logical move, of course, would be to protect it with b3, and this even has the, you know, added threat of trapping the queen here immediately. But Black has this very typical and very strong move c4. It basically, well, it breaks down this structure in terms of now we are gonna exchange our c4 pawn for the b3 and a4 pawn. There's no reasonable way to defend both these pawns. Well, if you take on c4, we're probably gonna take on a4 first, and c4 is gonna fall. And when these 3 pawns are gonna disappear, I understand it's completely symmetrical, but black is going to have a huge advantage. I mean, well, just looks at the difference in pieces. The bishop at a6 will be attacking a weak pawn here. This bishop is also dominating. A knight will jump to c5. All black pieces are just much better placed than white. So, I mean, the dream in the Benko is that, well, despite material might only being equal when we regain the pawn, our sort of pieces are gonna be much better. Again, well, look at this knight at h4. What is it doing there? So b3 looks very not logical, but it's important to understand c4 breaking down the structure, and black is gonna be much better here actually. So white tried bishop to g5, but after knight takes a4, he realized that, okay, if I'm actually gonna take the pawn on e7, rook e8 will happen, and next gonna be rook takes e2. It's pretty much a disaster. So something was like rook fc1 was tried, bishop b5. Now, I mean, black has a very good Benko gambit, except for it's not a gambit anymore. He's gotten the pawn back. So, well, black has a huge edge here. We could stop, but let's just add a few more moves. I think here, I think I will stop here. This is a nice way to sort of finish it off. It threatens the knight here, but it also threatens backwards against the weak pawn on d5, and basically the white structure is collapsing here. So I hope this has been a very, very nice sales pitch from black's perspective. But I also said this is kind of very much a fairy tale. So let's try and go back to this position where we started. But let's reverse the colors. Why is the Benko gambit not popular anymore? Well, a huge part is that white realized that, well, you should play e4. Black can take here, and we take back with the king. We have lost the right to castle, but it doesn't matter that much. So games used to continue like this, and in this position, the general thought, maybe like 10, 15 or 20 years ago, was that now there is somewhat a positional threat of knight g4, the knight will come to e5, start going in the c4 direction, as well as swapping off the defensive knight at f3. So white was sort of supposed to play the move h3. But at some point it became clear, no, this actually doesn't matter. Let's start fixing a favorable structure on the queen side and play the move a4. The first time I saw the move was in a blitz game online between Kramnik and Grishuk. And this is back in the days where chess.com didn't really exist. Everybody was playing online chess on something called Blitz-In, which was a sort of kind of a basic console, but everybody was using it. It was very functional for chess. And I was working for Vichy Anand at the time, and it was part of my job to download his opponent's blitz games just to get info. We were doing this before, I think especially the World Championship tournament in 2007. And we found a lot of interesting info there. You had to download the games one by one. So it took some effort from my side, but it was also very interesting. And one of the games was Kramnik with the white pieces against Grishuk, playing the move a4 in this position. And I just saw how beautifully Kramnik managed to completely shut down the structure on the queen side. Unfortunately, I don't have the game anymore, so I can't really show it to you. So I will show you some correspondence games that really sort of shows how the computer thinks the position should be played. So after a4, queen b6 is very logical, right? We put sort of pressure to the b3 square. We're going to put the rook here. The next move, I'm sure Kramnik didn't play, but it's actually pretty cool. Just rook a3. I mean, we're going to cover the weak square here, and also we get the rook somewhat out of harm's way from the bishop. Rook fb8 is extremely logical, right? So knight d2, trying to jump to this square, but also this knight is going to jump there. So knight e8 is an extremely logical move. The idea is after knight b5, I mean, you cannot have the knight blocking all black's activity in the b file forever, right? So knight c7, as happens next, is very typical. We're gonna dissolve the blockade here, and then we're gonna play in the b file. But now white can do the move knight c4, queen goes to b7, an exchange happens, and the move a5. Now it looks less attractive, right? I mean, this rook that I was telling you was good is actually just shooting into this great passed pawn. The b file, well, what is the activity here? I mean, b3, it's not a weak square, it's completely covered. The b2 pawn, not really. It's also well defended. A huge part of it is that this knight on c4 is extremely strong. So black's next move is very logical. He plays knight e5 to try and exchange it. But, well, white can jump to b6, and after rook a7, well, then just play the move b3. It releases the pawn from the b2 square, meaning it's less weak. Black went back to d7, white went knight c4, and black cleverly played knight e5. Now he's actually managing to remove the knight on c4, but after, let's say, takes, bishop d2 as in the game, well, it just becomes an uphill struggle for black's survival. I mean, white has an extra pawn, the queen will go to c2, maybe rook b1 and playing for b4 next. I mean, white is just clearly better here. In the game, black managed to hold. It's a correspondent games, which means that they play with incredibly powerful computers, and somehow black was just about able to make a draw. But this, I mean, the final position, the position after a4, generally means that, well, the Benko gambit stops being attractive, right? It becomes, I mean, a rather passive system that doesn't really work. Does this mean that, well, this whole chapter is not really relevant? It only has perhaps the relevance. You need to know how to deal with it from the white side. Not exactly. I mean, the standard position I was showing you happens in the pure Benko, which is like this, and then, well, this is the kind of move order. From this one has become much less popular due to the setup I explained to you. But let's say it very often happens via transposition. I mean, some lines in the King's Gambit, you know, later black will play c5, and after d5, sometimes b5. I mean, well, you could see Kasparov was doing that a lot at some point. The Benko structures happens a lot by transpositions. Even, well, you could see it happen with colors reversed as well. So, I mean, you can, well, the pure form would be something like this. And now structures with b4, and we get this kind of things again. So it's not like just because the very pure move order leads to actually quite favorable circumstances for white that we shouldn't understand Benko structures in general, and we should also understand that they can be extremely good for the side sacrificing a pawn. So, I mean, it more becomes sort of two different stories competing with each other. As I keep repeating, in the pure form, it doesn't really work, but I still think the concept is general, and I hope you got a good taste for it in this chapter.